there's somebody in Sydney, Australia right now with a book in their hand is thinking about the world along the same lines of the conversation that we're having.
It's literally us manipulating and maneuvering 26 letters into different arrangements that might just liberate somebody.
Literacy is freedom.
And so many people was yelling, and it was wild to me. I was like, and this is literature right here. You know what I mean? I was like, this is the importance of books. You're listening to The Freedom Takes, a podcast from the Million Book Project. I'm your host, Reginald Dwayne Betts. I'm a poet, a lawyer, and a director of the Million Book Project.
And I'm Kelly Hernandez, guest co-host. I'm a student at Yale working with Dwayne on the Million Book Project.
So on this show, we talk to authors about their books and about their lives as readers and as writers, and really about what it means to be free. Now, today, Deesha Philyaw is our guest, author, columnist, essayist, and public speaker. Her book, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, is killing it. And by that, I mean it's a 2020 finalist for the National Book Award for Fiction. It is a 2021 Faulkner Award for Fiction finalist and a 2020 LA Times Book Prize for the Art Seidenbaum Award for First Fiction. And listen, you heard it here first, maybe second, but the book has won the 2020 Story Prize. Her work has been listed as notable in the Best American Essay Series, and her writing on race, parent, and gender and culture has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, McSweeney's, the Rumpus, Brevity, Apogee Journal, and elsewhere.
Could you introduce The Secret Lives of Church Ladies for our listeners who haven't read it and treat us to a reading?
Absolutely. Thank you. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies is a collection of 9 short stories about Black women, sex, and the Black church. And I'm especially glad to be here reading it to you because ultimately it's a book about freedom. I'm going to read excerpts from 2 of the stories. The first excerpt is from a story called Snowfall. And all you need to know to get into this one is that the narrator's voice that you hear, her name is Arletha. And when she says we, she's talking about herself and her girlfriend, Rhonda. When my teaching job at the university brought us here last summer, we knew there would be snow, but we didn't know the stuff would shape the course of so many of our days and nights. Neither of us has fully mastered driving in the snow yet, and our experience with Uber drivers has been hit or miss. So we stock up on groceries and run as many errands as possible on clear days. But it's not just the snow. The cold temperatures alone have kept us in binge watching episodes of The Office and having Thai food delivered. There's just something about being out in it that makes us mildly cranky and singularly focused on getting to the next heated place. We were born and raised in warmer places, Georgia and Florida. Warmer, too, in the residual charm, polite smiles, and gentility of the white people whose ancestors owned ours. In the South, the weather does not force tears from your eyes, causing the faces of passing strangers to register worry about you for a millisecond. It's the wind, you want to tell them, but a millisecond is not enough time. In the South, the weather does not hurt you down to your bones or force you to wake up a half an hour early to remedy what has been done to your steps, your sidewalk, your driveway, and your car as you slept. But the South has hurricanes, they say. Yes, but not damn near daily, not for a full quarter of the year. You tell people up here that you're from the South, and 9 times out of 10, they say the same old thing. I'm sure you miss the sunshine. Rhonda and I both miss taking sunshine and easy morning commutes for granted. But what we really miss are the laughter and embrace of our mothers and grandmothers and aunties, kin and not kin. We miss the big oak tables in their dining rooms where, as kids in the 70s and 80s, we ate bowl after bowl of their banana pudding as they talked to each other about how much weight you gained, like you weren't even there. We miss helping them snap green beans and shell peas, sitting at their kitchen tables, watching The Young and the Restless on the TV, perched on the pass-through. We miss how they loved Victor Newman, hated Jill Foster and envied Miss Chancellor and how she dripped diamonds and chandeliers. We miss their bare brown arms reaching to hang clothes on the line with wooden pins. We miss their sun tea, brewed all day in big jars on the picnic table in the backyard, then later loaded with sugar and sipped over plates of their fried chicken in the early evening. We miss lying next to them at night in their four-poster beds with two soft mattresses covered by iron sheets and three-generation-old blankets. We miss their house coats, perfumed with absorbing junior liniment and hints of the white shoulders they'd spritzed on from an atomizer that morning before church. We miss tracing the soft folds in their skin when we held hands and watched our favorite TV shows in their beds: Dallas, Dynasty, Knots Landing, and Falcon Crest. We miss how they laughed and were easy with each other, how their friendships lasted lifetimes, outlasting wayward husbands and ungrateful children. Outlasted that time Alma caught Joe cheating and she whacked him on the top of the head with the sword he'd brought back from the war, but he told the people at the hospital he didn't know who did it. Outlasted having to hide your medicine bottles and your shoes because otherwise 7 of your 9 children were liable to steal them. We miss how they seemed to judge everyone but themselves. Or maybe that judgment was in the nerve pills they procured from the Chinese doctor on Bay Street who didn't ask questions. We miss their furtive cups of brown liquor on Friday and unabashed cries for Jesus come Sunday. We miss their one gold tooth that made us wonder who they had been as young women. We miss their blue crabs, the shells boiled to a blood red in wash tubs atop bricks over makeshift fires built in the yard. The wash tubs reminded us of cauldrons full of rock salt and cayenne-drenched water bubbling and rolling, mesh bags of seasonings and halved onions and peppers floating on top, along with potatoes and ears of corn. We miss how they stood over those cauldrons like witches stirring a potion. With sweat beading on the tips of their noses and smoke swirling around their hands and wrists, they wielded long-handled spoons to press the frantic, flailing crabs toward their deaths. We miss how they made our Easter dresses and pound cakes and a way out of no way. But we lost all those things when we chose each other. Only the memories remain, which is why, even though we grew up in different places, so many of our bedtime conversations start with, "Remember when?" As we lie there in the dark with our nostalgia and nothing to distract us from it. Not even each other. Not anymore. The next excerpt I'll read is from a story called Peach Cobbler. Peach Cobbler is a story told through the voice of a girl named Olivia. We meet her when she's 5, and then the story follows her into adolescence, and her life is marked by the fact that her mother is having an affair with the pastor of their church, and Olivia has the burden of keeping this secret. My mother's peach cobbler was so good, it made God himself cheat on his wife. When I was 5, I hovered around my mother in the kitchen, watching, close enough to have memorized all the ingredients and steps by the time I was 6, but not too close to make her yell at me for being in the way, and not close enough to see the exact measurements she used. She never wrote the recipe down. Without having to be told, I learned not to ask questions about that cobbler or about God. I learned not to say anything at all about him hunching over our kitchen table every Monday, eating plate after plate of peach cobbler, and then disappearing into the bedroom I shared with my mother. I became a silent student of my mother and her cobbler making ways. Even when I was older and no longer believed that God and Reverend Troy Neely were one and the same, I still longed to perfect the sweetness and textures of my mother's cobbler. My mother, who fed me TV dinners, baked a peach cobbler with fresh peaches every Monday, her day off from the diner where she waited tables. She always said Sunday was her Saturday and Monday was her Sunday. What I knew was that none of her days were for me. And for many of those Mondays off and on during my childhood, God, to my child's mind, would stop by and eat an entire 8x8 pan of cobbler. My mother never ate any of the cobbler herself. She said she didn't like peaches. She would shoo me out of the kitchen before God could offer me any, but I doubted he would have offered even if I'd sat right down next to him. God was an old fat man, like a black Santa, and I imagined my mother's peach cobbler contributing to his girth. Some Mondays, God would arrive after dinner and leave as I lay curled up on the couch watching Little House on the Prairie in the living room. Other times, my mother and God would already be in the bedroom when I got home from school. I could hear moaning and pounding like a board hitting a wall as soon as I entered the house. I would shut the front door quietly behind me and tiptoe down the hall to listen outside the bedroom door. "Oh God! Oh God! Oh God!" my mother would cry. I could hear God too, his voice low and growly saying, "Yes, yes, yes."
So that reading,
Thank you.
I think one, it is so hard to be funny as a writer and to be serious at the same time. And one of the things I'm just really impressed at is I know that it's all of the technical work that's done in those stories to make them cohere in the way that they do. But I could close my eyes and just feel like it's somebody that's just like telling me how it is. And that's the thing I greatly appreciate about it. It has its power based on what's being said. Um, and that's helped by the craft, but it's like what's being said really, really matters. I think that was just dope.
Yeah, no. I love peach cobbler, by the way, so I'm so happy you read that. It's like probably
You love peach cobbler, the food or the
both,
book?
both,
Right.
both. So Deesha, as a queer woman who grew up in the Catholic Church, I really appreciated also the epigraph in the beginning of the book.
Yes.
So for the listeners who haven't read it, it says, "Let it be known, I did not fall from grace. I leapt to freedom," by Ansel Elkins' autobiography of Eve. And I think it's so fitting because in many of these stories, you write about women who are often restricted, boxed in, as the folks in Snowfall are. Um, what do you hope young women take away from your stories?
Man, I hope they take away that they can get free much sooner than a lot of us did. They don't have to wait until they're 35 and on the occasion of their mother's too early death like I did to finally say this isn't working for me. And so I hope it saves them a couple of decades and they get free sooner. I hope that it sparks conversations that they'll have with their mothers and anybody in their lives that are invested in those restrictions, invested in those binaries that don't serve anybody. I hope they see themselves and know that they're not alone, because I think a lot of times we think that we're the only ones grappling with these things, and the secrecy of it is because we've been told that we can't even speak these things, we can't even speak these feelings and these truths, and so we hide it. And so hopefully by putting it on the page they'll understand that this is something that a lot of us go through, and that there's a real sisterhood in the best sense of that word, in that we help each other get free. We make the most of what we have, and what we have and what we've always had is stories.
In all the stories, there are all these different relationships and women different stages of their lives, but one that seems to come up very often is the relationships between mothers and daughters.
Yeah.
So you've also written a co-parenting book with your ex-partner.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was incredible, by the way.
Thanks.
It stood out to me, though, that some of these stories were from the perspectives of daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if this was something that you did intentionally to write from the perspective of a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
or not to write from the perspective of a mother.
Believe it or not, it was not intentional. I sent the manuscript in when it was done, and I was thinking about the stories, and I was like, there's a lot of mother's daughter stuff in this. And it was like, well, duh, I lost my mother when she was 52 and I was 34. to breast cancer. And we made our peace. I mean, it was definitely the defining relationship of my life, one of the most difficult relationships I have ever had, but we had 6 weeks before she died and we got right. But clearly, we had some unfinished business, and it showed up in these stories. It showed up in the mothers, it showed up in the daughters. There are pieces of us all over this book. There's no one character that's me or one that's my mother. You're right in that it's daughter perspectives, because I tend to need a wide berth before I tackle stuff that's rooted in my personal life. I'm still mothering. I'll be mothering forever. So I don't know when I will take that position, the mother position. Part of it too is I wrote about my kids a lot when they were little. I wrote a column for Literary Mama for 4 years about my kids and about my youngest daughter in particular, who is she is adopted. And I have regrets about writing about my kids as much as I did, because they could not consent to that.
I do want to say what I found powerful about this though is that I got a like a really profound glimpse into the interior landscape of women, those who suffered in really different ways, who's fucked up because it's the catalyst for it was men who were mistreating them, right? And I'm thinking about the way in which sometimes our role in the world actually strangles your freedom. And I guess my question is, what is the parallel story written by somebody else? I mean, really written by somebody that identifies as a man, who you feel like even comes close to approaching the level of being seen that gets revealed in these stories on like multiple layers?
I think about the question. What I thought you were going to ask me was, men's role in all of this. And I would have said listening and talking to other men. Because I've had men kind of say a variation of what you said, which is, I'm seeing and hearing these women and girls for the first time. And I always say, no, this is not the first time. Y'all just don't listen to us.
Well, see, I ain't say that because I listen, so I just want to be clear
Okay, okay,
to the listeners. Like, I didn't
you
say
listen.
that thing.
I want to go back to Dwayne's question because I had more time to think about it. Nathan McCall makes me want to holler. And not Claude McKay. Is it Claude Brown? Man-Child in the Promised Land?
Yes, Claude Brown.
Those two books, I really saw Black men and boys. I felt like I was being let in on secrets when I read those books, and it made my heart hurt for them. I felt like I understood so much, and there's a huge window of time. I mean, they were writing about totally different decades and in totally different places. Nathan McCall, I believe he was in Virginia, and Claude Brown was writing about New York City, and upstate New York. And those books just devastated me.
I still know Cat Dude Tootsie. I still remember the cat name that got raped in the McCall book. I think like men know how to write about violence that we've experienced. And I include myself in this. I think we still know how to do a better job of depicting the violence than like fully engaging with what it means to resist the violence. And I don't mean that you have to, because sometimes there was no resistance in the moment. And when we talk about like sexual violence in prison, we actually don't have an imaginative response that says, how do I intervene? In fact, typically, like, we don't intervene in any kind of violence in prison. And so, like, part of the abolitionist conversation, part of the decarceration conversation should put some onus and some burden on people who are in prison for us. I mean, I'm not there anymore, but for a much better job to be done and thinking about what it is to live in such a violent, in a brutally violent place. But that shit is frightening because we can't write what you wrote. We can't because it is really predicated on, I will fuck you up. If you step out of line, I will hurt you. And that is like That is my end response to everything. If you step out of line, I am going to hurt you, or I'm gonna try, right?
Well, it's interesting you say that they do, but then in prison they don't on behalf of someone else. And
Right.
you know,
I think outside a lot of times we don't on behalf of women.
not
You
even
know,
in conversation. Not even like a physical violence isn't happening. But one of the things that we often want for you all, we always say, men talk to other men. Maybe they'll listen to you because they're not listening to us. But yeah, with Giles and the violence with or her protecting herself with the bottle is a sort of a precursor to what comes later. And when I was a girl that age, we weren't doing that.
So just pause for a minute. I don't think people know what is going on in Giles' story. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment?
Yeah, Giles is my favorite character. First, I want to, in all of the stories, and I love all my characters, but I love that girl the most. She's 14 years old. She is being raised by her great grandmother. And I think, for context, her neighbor is a sexual predator who's 35 years old. And she and her friend are also being harassed on the street by other men and boys in the neighborhood. And she fights back.
nah, she don't just fight back. She like, this is the code. She's like, I'm trained to go on site. I'm breaking bottles. Hey, it's funny though, because you had mentioned earlier about regretting writing about your children because they couldn't give consent, and I think consent is important, and especially any kind of sexual consent. But I wonder because my son is like backed up so he can hear what I'm saying right now, and I wonder what permission I have to write about him and his brother. So he's 13 and his brother's 9, and I do believe that just like everybody else we choose to write about, they should give consent. But then I'm like, yo, you're a fucking child, man. You're supposed to be seen and not heard. And like I just don't want to pretend like you have too much right to govern. And I hope that I don't embarrass you, but part of me feels like I just have to say whatever I need to say under all of the circumstances.
Well, and that's the thing, because it's still our stories to tell. And you bump up against this line of, where does my story end and theirs begin, and the other way around, and then there's overlap. It's tricky, and I don't have any easy answers, and I think there's no blanket protocol. I think every parent child has to sort that out for themselves. I'm certainly not saying never, that I think it's a problem to ever write about your kids. I just wish I had done it differently. And I did get one occasion to do it differently when my youngest, she's 17 now, when she was 13, I was more cognizant of, trying to respect her privacy. And I was writing an essay about her wanting to take a DNA test because she's adopted, and she wants to know as much as she can, about her biological self and roots. And so we did that, and I wrote an essay, and the editor was like, "There's just something missing." I'm like, "Yeah, my daughter,"
Yeah.
because I, I'm trying to toe this line. I'm trying to carve. I was like gerrymandering the damn essay, right? And so the editor was like, "Well, can you talk to her about it?" And so Peyton and I started talking about it, and I was like, can we just write this together? Can we just, you know, then I won't speak for you. I can speak about you, but then you can speak for yourself as well. And so we wrote that essay together.
Oh, that's dope. I think that's probably one good way to approach it. I told my son we writing a book together. And he was like, "Really, we doing this?" I was like, "Damn right. How you gonna get to college? This college fun, baby."
Let him know this is how it works.
I'm not a parent, so I'm just sit here and recognize that there is a lot of interesting consent issues that I'm not privy to, but I appreciate it. I'll just say, for one, as a daughter of immigrant parents, like that's never crossing their mind, like consent, et cetera, et cetera. That's just like not at all how I was raised. So I appreciate that y'all are having these conversations. I eventually will myself, hopefully, but to get back into the conversation about Peach Cobbler, one thing that I really appreciated also is, I mean, I think I had just never read something like Olivia's character and the situation she was in. One of the things that we often see as women in shows, in like novels and such, is often fighting the other woman, quote unquote. And I was just really appreciative that that dynamic was not present in this. But I also made me wonder that there's a line in the story um, that made me think that the narrator from Peach Cobbler, Olivia, was also the narrator in Instructions for Married Christian Husbands. And you're nodding. Is that an affirmative yes? That was her?
Yes, that was her. I couldn't let Olivia go. I didn't plan that, but when I was writing that story, um and I got to that part and it was like, and I own a bakery and I make the best peach cobbler in town. I was like, that's her. That's her. This is where she landed. Cause I think I needed to know for myself. And I didn't know when I ended the story the way I did. I felt the same the way that people tell me they felt, which is like, what's she gonna do? But I still felt like that was a good way to end. And then you mentioned about not pitting the women in the the affair triad against each other. That was definitely an intentional choice. um Even though Olivia's mother kind of does it by proxy by sending her child into that woman's house, which was foul.
It's interesting. Was it? I wanted to say it was foul at first, and then I thought, when you have nothing really to give your child, what does it mean to be so desperate that when you want your child to see a better life, you show them the kind of life that it feels like it's denied from you? Where else would she have sent her daughter? It's just like, that's the strange part about it, because it was some power in that too. You go to this dude's son who has all of the opportunities that you don't. You are affirmatively, like, capable of being who he is, because you making him who he is. So I don't know. I don't know. I struggle with that. I thought that was a power move, though,
Well,
almost.
and it's the same reason she didn't want her to go to the birthday party, because it was like, I don't want you thinking that, this is how life is going to be for you, because it's not. But where she failed on both counts is she didn't think about, well, how does this make my child feel? And
Right.
again, we were talking about old school parents. Their children didn't have feelings in the 70s and 80s.
I'm not certain if they got feelings now.
Right. So that's where she had whatever her intentions were. She didn't pause to say, okay, that's how I feel about it. How might my child feel about it? Because one of the things that's at least hard for me as being my mother's child, and I just knew I wasn't going to do this as a parent. And Kelly, I will just tell you, you may not fuck up the way your parents fucked up, but you will fuck up. So just, you might as well just do what you want. If I had parenting to do it again, I'd do more of what I wanted to do, because it's like there's going to be some shit they're not happy about no matter what you do. But that was the thing. Like, my mother saw me so much as an extension of herself. And I think that when people do that, they don't always think, how is this decision going to land? And my mother had trouble not taking it personally that we were so different.
Man, you just taught me something, because I do think one of the huge troubles I have is seeing my children as extensions of me. I mean, we even have language for it. Yo, that's your little mini me. It looked like you spit him out. Did you birth him, Dwayne? I was like, yeah. And the shit was labor intensive. Hey, it's this line, though. It's this line in Snowfall that I just wanted to. Like, this is a beautiful line, and the narrator says it's really talking about how they moved to a new city and that they have friends, and that they have work that they love. But then she says, but friendship is not the same as history. Snowfall is really about the relationship between the two women, but it's also about their relationship to their home. And I wonder, how do you think about that tension and that struggle, as a writer, when your world is frequently not the community you grew up in, and where do you locate your home? Do you still Are you from Pittsburgh?
From Jacksonville, Florida.
See, I mean, so, like, how do you think about home? If that's true, if friendship is not the same as history, how do you locate home, both in your work and also how you try to make your work intersect with your life?
I mean, my feelings about home wrote this book. I mean, it was nostalgia, it was memory, it was longing. Because I grew up what people would call poor slash working class. But in retrospect, I had a great childhood. I was raised by a mother and grandmother who absolutely loved me to pieces. Whatever, issues I had with my mom, I didn't doubt for a second. There was not a moment I didn't know that I was absolutely loved and cared for and safe. And so even when my economic and social circumstances improved, when I was a stay-at-home mom, and had 2 degrees, and one of them an Ivy League degree, and all of that, I was so unhappy. I was so unhappy. And so when I was writing, I was dissatisfied. So I tell people I haven't always been writing about church ladies per se, but I've always been writing about dissatisfied women because I was dissatisfied. And it just showed me it doesn't matter how much stuff you have. What I didn't have was that feeling that I had growing up with my friends, that it was just the best place in the world. We go outside and play and be gone all day. But the kids I grew up with, we're not like, still connected. I mean, we're connected like on Facebook, but not connected. And so I miss that. And that's what I keep going back to, that era of my life. And that's where the church ladies live. And that's where my grandmother's friends live, and the Salem cigarettes and the Doers and the Johnny Walker Red and all of that stuff that, when I think back to my childhood and those moments, that's what I miss. And Snowfall in particular came from that, um, on a freezing weekend here in Pittsburgh. And I was trying to write something that would fit in the collection, but be about feeling displaced and feeling and having that question, where is home? Because I was asked to read as part of my friend's book launch, and my theme that I connected to my work and her work and the other reader's work was displacement. And I felt like a displaced Southerner in this cold place, cold in every sense of the word. And I missed my mother. I miss she had been, gone a decade at that point. And there's not a day that I don't miss my mother, but I was really missing my mother. And that's where that story came from. Just feeling like my mother was too much, but then I wanted her, and it was cold outside, and I didn't want to shovel the damn snow. All of that, that ache, that ache, that ache, that ache. That's where that story came from.
So now I want to take a moment to talk about another story, Dear Sister. So in this story, Dear Sister, it really resonated with me for different reasons. First of all, I thought it was hilarious. I was cackling at times, so I really appreciated that. But then it also hit close to home, because my family had long heard rumors about girls that looked just like us growing up. And there was one day that my mom, my grandma, my aunts, and myself basically show up on the doorstep of my grandpa's entire other family. It was
I'm
messy.
sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
It was messy. We showed up with gifts though, and food, and a lot of good food.
See,
So it was good. It could have gone worse, is all I'll say. But like, what I really, really appreciate from Dear Sister is that they have some type of kinship that sisters have growing up when they grow up. Um, it wasn't necessarily the reality for my family. We're working on it. But I'm wondering if there was a story like Dear Sister that resonated with you the most, or that you connected the most to.
hmm I'll say this about Dear Sister. I have 4 half sisters, so that's 5 of us. 4 of us knew each other growing up, and my one sister, Tracy, and I, our mothers raised us like sisters, and then we met our other 2 sisters when they were little, and then once when they were older, and that was it. And so the 4 of us came together though when our father died. And we were sitting around at my stepmother's house, and her mother, so I guess that's my step mother and grandmother-in-law, was like, y'all know y'all got another sister, y'all. And we'd heard that over the years, but she never came around. And she was like, she deserves to know. And it was a wild coincidence. My stepsister had our other sister's number in her phone because they had been to like a pampered chef party together or something. And she was like, what's her name? I got her number right here. So we like, let's call her. So it's not like showing up on somebody's doorstep, but I don't recommend what we did because we were all excited about her, not thinking there's a reason this woman has not come and connected with this side of her family. She didn't want to, and I don't blame her. But us calling her like that made it seem like we were all close. And so, dear sister, those are the relationships, the kind of relationships that I wish I had with my sisters. But I only have one. I'm only close to one of them. I mean, now we all have like the group chat, including the sister who we called up. But back then, we didn't have that. So, dear sister is me imagining what could have been, even the mess of it, even the fact that Tashida and Renee don't get along. But even that, I miss that we didn't have that. So
Man,
see, everybody, call whoever that is that you know.
I'm about to call my sisters. I got three half sisters, and they got. I mean, I had three sisters. They got the same. We got the same dad, different moms, and they got the same mom. And then I got a brother with a different mom, and I got another brother with a different mom. So my dad got six, and we don't talk. I was locked up. I feel bad though, because they actually tried. They would write me letters. At least one of them would write me all the time, and I was just like, I came home and I was just like about my business. I feel bad actually. They really did try to reach out, and you always are trying to figure out how to like build a relationship, but sometimes when you didn't have one and you lack, you say like you say like friendship is not the same as history. Not having that history with my sisters meant that those histories build like synapses and shit in your brain, and you remember when you got mad or whatever, and then when that's disappeared,
Right.
it's hard to recover it.
Your siblings, that trying to connect thing, it doesn't have to be this grand production. I'm gonna tell you what I have with my sisters right now. We have a group chat, and we say happy Friday every Friday. And we may send a little gifts and things on the group chat. And there may not be anything else into the next Friday, and that's okay. But that's one thing that we can all do that just says, I'm here and we're here.
I'm loving my sister every day, and especially today with this conversation. Also, I think that's honestly better than a big production, as my family found out. So,
And letters better than calls, because a phone call, because that was too much, but a letter, that person can take it in as much and or as little on their time frame. So it's just grace for everybody.
yeah. Um, so I guess if it's okay with y'all, I'll ask the last question. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we ask all our guests this question. Frederick Douglass said that when we read, we become forever free. How do you think about this relationship with reading and freedom?
I'm gonna be real. Can I keep it like really real? So this is the same man that he and his white mistress mocked his illiterate black wife. So my first reaction to that quote is like with so many great men, when they say things, they weren't thinking about me. They weren't thinking about people that look like me. They weren't thinking about black women. So that was first. So now I need you to say the quote again so I can actually think about it.
No, that's real though, and I appreciate that because I mean, I remember reading that for the first time and being like deeply disappointed, but like also not surprised at the same time.
Right, because we're multitudes. We do some fucked up shit, and we're great at the same
Yeah.
damn time. There are so many things that we love about Frederick Douglass, and.
And I didn't know that, and I know it. I read that book because we all. That's why we read books multiple times, because sometimes we gloss over the worst parts of ourselves, and I think it's important to remind ourselves that we need to live up to our expectations. All right, so I'll read it. Frederick Douglass said that when we read, we become forever free. How do you think about the relationship between reading and freedom?
I know I read myself free. So I can definitely see a direct connection because reading was what allowed me to know that the world was bigger than what was right in front of my face. And I don't look at my childhood or my circumstances as anything I needed to escape, but I think it's something that all of us need to know, that the world is large and that we are trying to, as we're trying to find our place in it, the place for us might not be the place where we started. It may be somewhere else. And it's great to see as much of the world as you can, but you don't know what's out there if you don't read about it. For most of us, that's how we get started. And so I tend to, get lost in the worlds of the stories that are created. And I've been doing that since I was reading Judy Blume, who was like my favorite author when I was growing up. And so that's what books did for me. They told me about what was possible. And so having the freedom to move in the world, move beyond where where you find yourself. Obviously, having that freedom is what I wanted for myself, is what I want for my children, to never feel like they have to stay in any physical space or any emotional space, any relationship space. So reading helped me know that there's much more that's possible beyond my present circumstances, and to me that's freeing.
Well, we greatly appreciate having you here.
Likewise.
The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, folks, an excellent book that will be coming your way soon. Thanks for joining us for the Freedom Takes, a new podcast from the Million Book Project. We'll be back next time with another contemporary writer. You can find out more about the Million Book Project and subscribe to our newsletter at millionbookproject.org. Our initiative was made possible by a generous grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. This podcast was produced by Aaron Slomsky-Pritz, with production assistance by Elsa Hardy, Kelly Hernandez, Tess Wheelwright, and Molly Auger. Theme music by Reed Turchie.